Hello and welcome. It's 12 noon. It's the 12th day of August 2021. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming and stuff and news and stuff. And it's RPG a day, day 12. Every day for the month of August, we are taking a look at these interesting prompts brought to us by the people at RPG a day, autocratic.com, and castingshadowsblog.com, and responding to them and talking about aspects of our beloved hobby that is role-playing. And today's words are think, consensus. I'm probably saying that wrong. Consensus. It's weird that one of today's words is consensus, since the census was talliated. God, you know what I mean. Counted today, and the results are up over on multiple websites. Deep and triumph. Yeah, the prompts aren't as good as previously. But I thought about triumph, thus the picture of Frodo going to the west. And I thought about, how do you win D&D? What is the triumph at the end of the story for the player characters? And what do you do if the players lose? How much is at stake? When running an adventure, you have to take into account all the possibilities of the player's victory, but you also have to kind of think about, what if everything goes wrong? And that's happened. I mean, I remember several adventures that I've been on that were technically towards the end of the campaign, where the choice between us winning and us losing, and because of whatever reason, the players lost. In one of those campaigns that I was in, because we lost so badly, a huge section of the GM's world ended up being teleported straight to hell. Now, that was partially our fault because of a misworded wish, and us just totally blowing every possible way we could blow that campaign towards the end. So a whole very interesting ending where great, we just set 90% of the world to hell, and now all our old characters are evil thralls of the Orcus. Yay! And I remember when I ended running Tomb of Annihilation, and the players barely won, and in fact I had to sort of help them a little bit from behind the scenes with just reminding them of things that had happened previously, and contacts they've been made and things that they had at their disposal. Because it's such a strange way to end a module campaign. But yeah, they could have lost Tomb of Annihilation easily, and the end game could have played out. So when that game ended, it came to, okay, what next? What is the final fate of each character? And I gave each of them, Critical Role just did something recently with the same thing with the end of the Mighty Nine, where you gave each character a chance to, each player a chance to tell you what happened after and how they resolved their stories. And then I told them what happened after and resolved the stories of the various NPCs they made and how their actions affected the world. And I gave them chances to sort of direct where the next game would go based upon what their characters did towards the end, and whether it would have any say in the next game or not, since we all decided to set it in the same territory. That was also the last 5th edition game I ever ran, because that game after that was such a disaster. But of the few 5th edition adventures I've run, Tomb of Annihilation is definitely my favorite. The ending is such a precipice, because it's such a huge chance that the players could lose. And then you have to think about, okay, well, what if the bad guys triumph at the end? What story do I tell? And earlier this year, I, sarcastically talked about how I would run the Forgotten Realms if every Forgotten Realm module post 2014 actually was canon, as, Crawford said so. And in my mind, that meant he was saying every one of those modules happened and nobody stopped the endings from happening. And the ending of, Tomb of Annihilation is very much, okay, the bad guy wins, hundreds and thousands of people die, and the cosmos is basically disrupted, and he's created this whole new horrible landscape. Mordor wins, Sauron got the ring. Middle-earth as we know it is plunged into flames. This world is now dealing with the fact that it's 90% of its population is dead. Its cosmological beings, its gods have been severely damaged. The ideas of death and reincarnation and healing and all those things that are taken for granted in a D&D game suddenly don't exist. What would be the triumph of if the bad guys won, and how would you run that? What would you do if you're running a scenario and just the player characters just mess up so badly that the bad guys win? Do you Deus Ex Machina and just reset the board so that they have a chance to win after all? Or do you play it out? And of course, are they dead at the end? Are they alive at the end? What happened to them if they're alive? Is there any interest in continuing to tell the story of the world now that the bad guys have won? What if the player characters survive? What happened to them? Well, they're probably strapped to a wall somewhere in the bad guy's dungeon. It's usually the easiest way to continue with them. And now they have to reclaim the world that they indirectly caused the doom of. And that got me thinking, of course, as I said earlier, what would happen if the bad guys won Tomb of Annihilation? What would happen if the bad guys won Storm King's Thunder? What would happen if the bad guys won? What would happen if the Empire won and the Death Star destroyed the moon of Yavin and Luke never blew it up? What happens if the bad guys win? And vice versa, what happens to the story, to the world, after the heroes win? And say what you will about Critical Role, I think what they did at the end of the Mighty Nine is a great idea, and it's something to be emulated. Give each player a chance to tell you how the story of their character ends based upon the events of the past, which hopefully they remember most of, and where they see their character in a year, 5 years, 10 years, and how their character continues in this world post-end. Do they sail west on the last ship to Valinor? Do they become a king? Do they just retire and start a farm? Do they continue adventuring and exploring the world because their feet are too itchy? What happens to Fred the Ranger and Steve the Fighter and Susan the Cleric after they've defeated the Lich King of Potatoes? What are the stories that they have left to tell, if any, and how have the adventures of the past, however long your campaign was, a week, a month, a year, 5 years, affected them, affected the world, and what stories does the world have left to tell now that the player characters have successfully, after 2 years, defeated the Potato Lich King? You have to remember that one, Potato Lich King. Yeah, if we take anything out of this vlog, is that somewhere there is a Mr. Potato Head Lich, which is both awesome and frightening. And that's where I'll end this. Triumph! I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming. If you appreciate this content, please let me know. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Help me hit 1,000 subs by 2024, and head on over to Legion of Myth and tell them how awesome you think I am. Till then, stay warm, stay dry, stay awesome, stay sane, stay calm, and stay off my lawn.